Kenneth just asked me to say a couple of words, which it will be probably just a couple, if that's all right. We just feel very honoured and here with Agnes and Albert, our children, and we really are very fortunate to and very aware of the history. I hope to learn a lot more, and Kenneth's been really helpful, and the rest of you who know all this amazing information. We're just starting out on it, but thanks. It really is it's an honour, and we're very aware of it. So thank you, and I'll pass you to Kenneth.
Right, thanks. Well, thanks, Charlotte. I mean, it's lovely knowing you for about the last year or so, and you and your family. And needless to say, you've all done the most fantastic job with a control tower, which incidentally is the second one at Fearn. I'll mention that in a second. But bear in mind that what Charlotte and her family have done with that control tower, that is a quite rare design of control tower. There were a few of that particular design dating from 1942 across the UK, but there are not that many left, so the family's done the most marvellous job in preserving that. Well, as regards the history of Fearn Airfield, this actually dates from the late summer of 1940, when the airfield, which at that time was still not really built, but it was then known as Clay of Allen Airfield, but they changed the name probably just because the name was thought to be too obscure. The land here was requisitioned along with Tain, where we've been this morning, and this was for Royal Air Force as opposed to Royal Navy use. Now, the initial history of Fearn, once it was open, is a bit obscure. However, we do certainly know that in the early days, Fearn was the satellite airfield for RAF Tain. So obscure is the initial history that there are thought to be 3 different opening dates. No one's really quite sure. It was certainly late on in 1941. But from my own research, we certainly do know that Squadron Leader Beebe came from Tain to become the adjutant here at Fearn on, to be exact, the 2nd of December 1941. So that's why if nothing else, we've got to be a bit careful with accuracy for dates for obvious reasons. It initially served as the satellite for Tain, but then the big change came in the summer of 1942, when Fearn, although it was built as an RAF airfield with 3 runways and so on, it then was transferred to Royal Navy use to also become known by its ship name as HMS Hull. All naval airfields were named after birds with one exception. And this place became tremendously important in World War II as a training come first line base for particular torpedo bomber training. So that's why, if nothing else, you got the torpedo sheds there, those curved roof buildings. There was still building going on, not least because Fearn was converting to pure naval use, and therefore you had the naval hangars. If you can just see up there, but it's partly obscured, there's a curved roof hangar. That's a common naval design called a mains or mainhill hangar. Fearn had 30 or so of these hangars. Naval airfields had a lot of hangars. Certainly by 1944, building work was pretty much complete. And also it's worth noting too that where Charlotte and her family lived, that is the second control tower at Fearn, because the original one, just a bit to the right of the access track over there, you see a 1-storey building with 3 windows. That was the original RAF control tower. It was a satellite fighter airfield control tower. This was the design at the time. So this was a really busy and important place. So many naval squadrons were based here, flying especially quite a famous aircraft of the day called the Fairey Barracuda, which was a torpedo bomber come strike aircraft. Quite an angular looking aircraft, but it proved very successful. And then even some far less familiar types, that there was an experimental unit here that flew an aircraft called the Blackburn Firebrand, which was a rather unusual type, but it was worthwhile coming here. It was a fighter torpedo bomber, which was quite unusual even then. Eventually the airfield closed in a naval capacity in the early to mid-summer of 1946. But that wasn't the end of the Fearn airfield story by any means, because the Navy retained it in a primarily non-flying capacity for storage duties. But then in the early 1950s, and this is one of these many more minor mysteries involving Britain's airfields, it has now been certainly confirmed that number 8 Advanced Flying Training School that was based at Dal Cross, today's Inverness Airport, used Fearn and also one or two airfields like Eventon, where we unveiled a memorial like this last year, used it as a relief landing ground for training aircraft. This was the early 1950s. Eventually there were very significantly naval cuts to the government of the day in 1956. And if you look in Hansard, for example, you will see that Fearn is among various airfields named, in this case sadly listed as being up for disposal. So therefore, from all available evidence, and dates are always very, very difficult with airfields, not least here at Fearn, we can reasonably safely say that the airfield closed the following year in 1957. Since then, some people still remember that there was failed, but there was proposed oil support aviation here in the 1970s. And then there's the industrial estate. Now, as regards Easter, the airstrip down here, again, just in case there's any accidental confusion, this, on our web page, we say Fearn Claervallen, including Easter. So, although the airfield here is technically disused, of course there is an airstrip down there, so this is what we would call limited flying. And we've done this once or twice before with other airfield memorial unveilings. So that's been on the go for a while, but it's worth I mean, there's so much to mention, of course. But for example, if you see photographic archive records from 1946, you can even see there was actually a golf course, a 9-hole golf course at the southern end of the airfield. And this was when the airfield was still in Navy hands. These are all the fascinating social history details you can discover. But this is all part of the overall bigger picture with not only Fearn but all of our airfields. Enough to say we just can't afford to lose these places, even if they are now disused in a flying sense, like here is, at least in the original runway landing area part of this airfield. If we lost our airfields, our lives would be immeasurably poorer. So all we can just simply say to you all and everyone in society is that within reason, just please do all you reasonably can to help our airfields, save them, and not forgetting all the people who have served at these places, helping them, saving them, remembering them. They are being increasingly recognised as Britain's greatest ever physical assets. And if these places are just completely abandoned or demolished or left to rack and ruin, this is one of the very, very worst things you can do. So hopefully in the case of Fearn and Tain and all these other airfields right across the UK, with luck they will still be around one way or another in a physical sense, just to, most important of all, help every one of us in society. They help us in an incredible variety of ways that we might not realise, even right down, for example, to our health. Suffice to say, if you go in the hospital, you are relying upon an airfield simply to keep you alive. And it's as simple as that. And that's easily provable. So just do everything you can to help our airfields. And therefore, thank you all very much again for attending. And therefore, we're delighted to say that we're now able to unveil this memorial, which is our 85th. And by the end of this year, we'll be unveiling nearly 200 of them, would you believe? We're going as fast as we can with this. And therefore we're really pleased and honoured, along with Charlotte, to unveil this memorial to yet another of our priceless assets, in this case, Fearn Airfield. Thanks very much. Thank you.
Amazing.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thanks so much.
Amazing.
Okay.
That's fun.